So the Philadelphia Eagles have beaten the New England Patriots to win the Super Bowl. Big upset. New England losing to Philadelphia. Not many people saw this one coming. I want to talk to you tonight, just a short broadcast, about the big game. We can't say the SB words. I think it's copyrighted. The big game, divining rods, and the nature of time itself. Hello to you on YouTube. Hello to you on Twitter and on Facebook. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. I spent 20 years as a full-time minister. I have a Bible college degree, and what do I always say? I have a Bible college degree, 20-year minister, and I can't remember what else I always say, but there's something else, and there you go. 100,000 hours of study in the biblical scriptures. I'm also known as a guy that does divining rod divination. And you know what divining rods are. They are those copper rods that I always use. And if you saw my show this morning with Wayne Steiger, not your normal Sunday show, and you can always go back and watch it. 100,000 hours. Thank you. Yes. Someone asked about the Super Bowl, and I said, got the rods out, and I did this a few times. I said that New England was going to win the Super Bowl and that Philadelphia was going to cover the point spread. What that means is I believe New England was favored by 4 points. So if Philadelphia lost by 3 points or less, then they win the bet. And those of you that bet on Philadelphia win that bet. So I said New England would win, which they did not. I said Philadelphia would cover the spread, which they did, which brings us to a discussion of the nature of time itself. 3 football seasons ago, I didn't use the rods because I wasn't making rods then, but 3 football seasons ago, I used what I now understand to be a remote viewing technique to view the future and to predict every single NHL and NFL football game. That's not true. It wasn't every game. It was every game that wasn't a toss-up. I predicted against the point spread. And I was 79% accurate against the point spread for that season. 79%. The best of professional prognosticators, I mean, if they get over, I didn't put in the lavalier mic for the Twitter and the Facebook. I hope this sounds okay. If they get over 50%, they're very, very excited. So I hit 70, 78, 79. It was 78.855% or something like that. So almost 80%. That's 8 out of 10, folks. That's very, very good. If you can predict 8 out of 10 games and bet them, you can make a lot of money. Unfortunately, I wasn't in Nevada. I wasn't in the place where I could go to Nevada at that time to be able to take advantage of that. But what I found was this, that if I made the predictions, they play football on Sunday. If I made the predictions early in the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, somewhere between 65 and 75%. But if I made the predictions on Saturday, late Saturday night, that's when I was able to get 70, 75, 80%, sometimes 85% on certain Sundays, because time itself, I believe, is constantly fluid. So I have 100% belief that this morning about, it was about 10 o'clock Eastern time, the way time was at that time, the way the future was at that time, New England was going to win the Super Bowl as of 10 a.m. this morning. Philadelphia was going to cover as of 10 a.m. this morning. But as Anton is saying, the future can be altered, and I'm saying that the future is always altered. The fluidity of time moving from the time, the only way that you could approach 100%, you could never be 100%. People say, well, if you're so good, if you're so smart, why aren't you 100% with your predictions? Well, because you're stupid. You don't understand how time works. Like Buster says, the future is constantly changing. You could predict 2 seconds before kickoff and not be 100%. You could probably predict at halftime and not be 100%. You might even be able to predict in the fourth quarter and not be 100%. That's why people say, why don't you do the lottery with the divining rods? Well, the lottery is very hard to get to the numbers when you're doing yes-no questions. Rod's only dealing yes-no questions. I guess you could say point to the winning numbers and hold them up on a sheet. That might work. But you need something with wiggle room. That's why the NFL and other sports that have a point spread is ideal. Am I advocating rods for gambling? No, I'm really trying to talk more about the nature of time itself. But it's very interesting. This is the first time I've ever predicted a sporting event with the divining rods. And if I had bet Philadelphia, if I'd have bet $100 on Philadelphia to win and cover the point spread, I'd have probably made $300 or $400. I'd have made at least $250, $300, putting up $100 for the Eagles to cover at 4-point underdogs. Again, I'm in Clearwater. I'm not in Las Vegas. I did toy with the idea of driving across the state. There's a gambling boat that goes out of Cape Canaveral and going on there, but I didn't want to spend 4 hours on a little boat in a choppy Atlantic Ocean with a bunch of drunk people. So I passed on that. But, trying to find ways to fund this work and expand this work, I've actually considered going and living in Nevada during football season to be able to generate income. Because, man, I tell you what, if I could hit 80%, 70% every single Sunday, we could be on television, ladies and gentlemen. And I mean that literally. So it's very, very interesting. Ellen says she's getting better and better with her rods. And they are copper. The rods that I use are copper. And that's a good question, Ellie Mack. She says, should the use of this power be used in such trivialities? Well, I can see where you're coming from. I can see the moral problem with saying, hey, why are you going to use divination to make money? But then again, I can see if you're able to fund a work that's really helping people by doing it, then, I can see that end of it as well. So I think it's very interesting. And it just leads me into a discussion of time travel itself. I just don't know if we can travel into the future, because the future's always changing. And if you think you're traveling to the future, you're never really going to travel to the future that you think you're traveling to. And guys, we're talking about traveling to the future. And it's one thing if you predict the Eagles to lose and cover the spread, and they do cover the spread. It's one thing if you predict the Patriots to win and they lose, but if you're trying to travel to the future and you get it just a little bit wrong, and I submit that it's impossible to get it 100% right, where are you going to wind up? If it's just a little bit off, will you just wind up a few minutes off, a few hours off, a few years off? Or might you wind up in another dimension that you weren't meaning to travel to? Sorry that I can't mute myself for Twitter and YouTube and Facebook. That's gross, I know. And like David says, is there only one future? And it's impossible. It's impossible to travel with exact specificity into the future. So I don't know if it's really possible to travel into the future or not. To me, I'm very dubious about those possibilities. Let me amend that. I'm very dubious about the possibility of successfully traveling to the future. It could be a one-way trip, and it could be a one-way trip to a place that you weren't planning for. Now, let's talk about this. Traveling to the past. Traveling to the past. Now, the past is already set. The Eagles beat the Patriots. I didn't watch the game. I think it was 8 points, right? The Eagles beat the Patriots by 8 points. Was it 41-33, something like that? So we know that happened. So we should be able to travel back to yesterday if we wanted to and place a bet. And we're talking about betting. Point being that the past is the past, and the past is set. So even though there's probably, likely, possibly more realities than this one, it seems to me that we could travel back in time, possibly. We could travel back in time, but traveling forward, I don't know. Tanhawk Group says, the more I study, the more I'm coming to believe that we're the controllers and creators of the future, and that the real battle is over using the past to control the future. So maybe Tanhawk Group is saying, listen, we don't even have to go to the future. We can go to the past to control the future. I don't know. But I've got to believe, from what I know and from my experience in, is it time travel? Is it remote viewing? It showed me that, man, the future, you just don't know. It changes. It's constantly fluctuating. It's constantly changing. It's constantly altering. Time is very, very fluid. This idea that your fate is set, your future is set, the way things are going to be, folks, that's just not true. That's just not true. It's constantly, as Michelle says, in flux. That's the future. So how could we possibly travel to the future when we don't know where we'd end up? We don't know where we'd end up. Dave says maybe once we leave this timeline, we can't return to it. Maybe. So if somebody said to me, Jeff, do you think we can travel to the future? I'm going to say no, not safely. Not with any specificity. Not with any assurance of, I mean, you may travel to the future, but you don't know what future you're going to get, you're going to arrive at, and you don't know what future you're going to end up in, and it's probably a one-way trip. It's probably a one-way trip. If the Christ was also referred to as the Son of Man or descendant of man, could he have been a future time traveler? Somebody on Twitter says, do I need a passport to traverse dimensions? Probably not, but if we ever get to the time where we're doing that on a regular basis, there probably will be interdimensional passports. That's actually a fascinating subject. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear your ideas, your thoughts. I don't think we can travel to the future, or we can't travel where we want to go in the future. It'd be a one-way trip. Boom, it'd just be there, and you'd be there, man. The past, I can see the past. Past is set. Past is done. But then, of course, you have the old conundrum of if you go into the past and you change something in the past, what happens to the future? And if you go into the past, here's a question for you as well. If you go into the past, you're in the past, which means that where you came from is in the future again, and time is fluid. So if you go back to the past, can you come back to a time in the future, or does it change even as you're back in the past? If you go back in the past, do you become part of that timeline in the past? Or because it's done, because it's over, are you able to move back and forth? Or is all time ever here right now? Or is time more like radio stations? And it's all here right now. So if you go back into the past, maybe the past isn't even really set. And the argument could be made that if you go back to the past, then you're changing it just by going back to it. And once you change it, the permutations and the possibilities might make it really impossible for you to get back to the place from which you left. The more I talk, the more I think, the more I say that time travel is impossible. At least time travel with return trips are impossible. And maybe time travel is impossible because if you go into the past, you change the future. And the only time that people do it is through roguery, and somehow they get through. And maybe that's what somebody said here causes the Mandela effect. I think the Mandela effect is more caused by the quantum computing pushing reality out of those cans and isolating their chips, and the reverberations of it go out into our world and change reality here just a little bit. Ellen says that going back into time could cause a paradox if anything has changed. And Ellen, just by you going back there, have you changed it? Time is only linear in this reality. Jeff, you're talking a lot about B theory of time. Okay. Yeah, I remember the Ashton Kutcher butterfly effect. And I think that's probably the way that it really is. I think that's probably the way that it really is. And time is a moving thing. Time is fluid. Time is not set. And I have to say that time travel is foolish. Time travel is a bad idea. And I say, with what I know now, if I ever had to be Rex Bear's in the house, I'd love to hear what Rex has to say about this. Rex, if we could go back in time, do we change time by going back there? And how can we go to the future if the future's not set? Because even by predicting the day of the Super Bowl, I was still only 80% right. Rex, what do you think? Can we time travel? Is it possible? Because time is moving constantly. I say no. And I say that if we do try, it's a one-way trip for sure. And the risks are too great. Rex says that we can change it in our mind, literally. But does that mean we literally change it, or do we just change our perception of it? That's the real question, I think. Do we really change it? Or are we just changing the perception of it? Because I just don't see how it's possible to change time. I don't see how it's possible to travel in time. If traveling in time means that, I mean, how can we do it? I just don't see it as possible. I mean, my experience is that Rex says we can literally change time. I don't see how. I really don't. And if we could, would we want to? Because what are the implications of it? What are the implications of it? Again, I've shown through my own experience in predicting the future that the closer you get to it, the more accurate you're able to predict it. But you still can't predict it with exact specificity. And Rex says if you push enough energy in one point, what did he say? If you push enough energy in one point of space, it will cause a ripple effect of the web. I don't know if he's messing with me or not. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So there we go. Who knows? And I guess the reality of it is, no, Rex says he is serious. Absolutely. Okay. I don't know, but I'm not going to volunteer for that trip. I'm just not. I've seen that time is fluid. I've seen that time changes. And I'm just not convinced that if we go forward in time, especially, that we could ever get back. Or I'm not even sure where we'd wind up. And if we do go into the past, might the past also change? And might our presence there just change it? And who knows what we come back to? So wasn't it one of the Planet of the Apes movies with Marky Mark where he came back and the apes, the apes had won? Jenny tells me I'm mashing up two separate concepts of time. Well, I didn't know that we really knew what the concepts of time were. So anyway, very, very interesting. We'll have to get together with Rex at some point and find out his thoughts on this, as I really would like to hear what he has to say about it, because I don't get it just from the chat discussion here. But there you go, ladies and gentlemen. This morning, about 10 a.m., I predicted that New England would win the Super Bowl through the use of the rods and that Philadelphia would cover the spread. And I'm telling you, at 10 a.m. this morning, that was what was going to happen. Of course, New England did not win the Super Bowl, but Philadelphia did cover the spread. Let me know, Rex, anytime they did cover the spread. And I know that from going through a whole season of NFL football, I was able to approach 80%, 78 and change on predicting the accurate outcome of the games versus the spread. And the closer to Sunday that I made the predictions, the more accurate that I was by a factor of 5 to sometimes as much as 10%. So if I'd been betting, I still would have been okay. I still would have probably doubled my money at least. So that's the good news. Bad news is I'm not in Las Vegas, and I didn't want to go get on a shaky boat with a bunch of drunk people for 4 hours in a choppy Atlantic Ocean when it was cold in Florida. Besides, I would have had to drive 2 hours both ways, so I didn't do that. But one of these times, I'm going to do it. Time, Elvis once said, if time were not a moving thing and we could make it stay, this hour of love we share would always be. There'd be no coming day to shine its morning light and make us realize our night is over. I don't know, Elvis. I can't figure it out either, brother. But there you go. The big game, divining rods, the nature of time. I think the final score was 41-33. I didn't watch the game. Yeah, it's called It's Over. That's an Elvis song. I didn't watch the game. I think that's what it was, 41-33. So very interesting. Pondering the realities of time, pondering time itself. Rex Bear stopped by to talk with us a little bit. It looks like we'll be doing a show together on this in the future. Tannock Group says the real question is, can we travel in time in the physical 3D dimension? And you'd have to throw in the space element as well, i.e. teleportation. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I am not going to volunteer for that trip. Thanks, but no thanks. And somebody said I need to watch more Star Trek. I'll have you know that I have watched every single episode of real Star Trek, the original series, all of the movies. And I would say that I am an expert in Star Trek, ladies and gentlemen. So I take offense at that remark. Preconceived thoughts would have altered the rods. Mishi, I say nay to that. I don't believe the rods respond to preconceived thoughts. I think the rods read the ether. And I think that they're very, very objective, because many times I will think things, I will believe things, and the rods will go against my beliefs. And it's amazing. I've been doing rods now for a couple of years. I've sold, we could do a show in about 40 minutes. I can do that, Rex. Send me an invite and we'll do it. Or if you want to do it on my on this channel, let me know. But we can do it on your show. We can do it here, whatever. You let me know. We sold like 300 pairs of these rods, and I forgot what my point was with that. But Third Eye Jedi says that his rods told him yesterday that Philly was going to win. There you go. They work, ladies and gentlemen. Rex is going to send me a link. So in about 40, 45 minutes or so, we'll be on the Leak Project talking about the big game, the nature of time, divining rods, and other stuff. Going to have a show with Heidi talking about the planets and their effect on us coming up here in the not too distant future as well. Not the same as a pendulum, kind of the same as a pendulum, but just depends upon who uses them and what their resonance is with the device. I bet it is weird in Minnesota tonight. That's where the Super Bowl was held, ladies and gentlemen. So there you go. With that, I'll leave you with those thoughts. I'll invite you to head over to the Leak Project in about 45 minutes. So that would make it about 12:15 on the East Coast. And we'll look forward to talking. I didn't say Heidi was going to be there, but she might be. If Rex invites her, that'd be great. But Heidi works for a living, so I don't know if she'll be able to do that at the drop of a hat. But sometime this week, we'll have Heidi on to talk on this channel, to talk about the planets and how they react to us and what they are and how they make changes in our life. So I'm going to sign off for now. I'm going to get ready to talk with Rex in about 45 minutes. And yeah, the big game, divining rods, and the nature of time itself. I salute my YouTube audience. Thank you for being here. Please subscribe. Please like. Please share. Thank you, and salute, a left-handed salute, so I don't hit the microphone, to my Facebook and my Twitter audience. You can always head over to Jeff Daugherty Show on YouTube, be able to use the chat, be able to see the visuals that we share. And please head over to Leak Project on YouTube in about 45 minutes and see a great show with the real man, the real myth, the real legend, Rex Bear himself. And we're looking forward to that. Until then, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. And I'm encouraging you to be your own guru, guide your own spirit, master your own ascension. Ask questions, question answers. This is the Gospel Truth Army. March on. Be fearless. And unindoctrinate yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Oh man, I'm trying to turn off the chat room on Twitter, and it's kind of difficult. So we're off on Twitter. See you soon over at Leak Project, about 45 minutes. Stay fearless, my friends.